Nick, good morning. It's good to see you're laughing in great form. Welcome to the Money Clinic. How are things? How have things been in the last week?
Yeah, they've been good, Conor. It's the island of Ireland is now fully opened now that the south is trying to catch up with the rest of the country. So we've seen a bit more activity around Galway and in Ireland in general. But things have been good. The markets, I suppose, have been reasonably quiet over the last week. Inflation is still the main issue that people are talking about. It's this fear that is lurking in the background. You hear different reports every day. There's something that's quietening it down, or all of a sudden it'll pop back up and is in everybody's thoughts again. So it's still there. It never really goes away. It's just whether or not it's going to be something that's going to force the Fed into action. So economic data has been positive. Everything's looking quite good. You just have to, and we've spoken about it a couple of times on this program. Without the second quarter earnings and that proof that we're still moving in the right direction, we seem to be in a bit of a dull space at the moment. The market's not really going anywhere.
Yeah, just on inflation, as you know, you have been a contributor to my excellent podcast, Money and Plants. And this morning I released episode 29 with Dario Perkins, who used to work in Gordon Brown's team, and he worked in the Bank of England, and he is now the managing director of TS Lombard. And we talked about inflation and we talked about MMT. And it's interesting, but people like Dario are basically saying that, yes, there is inflation, but that's to be expected because the economy was closed. Now we're opened up, so there's pent up demand. And he basically describes this inflationary period as a lot of noise. And he expects that over the next 6 months, as things start to open up and settle down, then the inflationary concerns should subside somewhat. But it's a really interesting conversation I had with him this morning. So anybody in the Money Clinic, if you want to have a look at that, I think you might be interested in it. But just
I was just going to say, I mean, one of the things that kind of that would underscore that at the moment is if you look at some of the data that's coming out of China. They've had this hot data running for quite some time, and that's started to level out now. So, there's every chance that is the way forward.
Yeah, because I think it's just interesting whenever you have someone of Dario's background who is actually saying, well, look, this is to be expected, so it's not overly interesting. But then you have the more traditional economists, and actually what I think's going on here is it's all really about economic ideology and positions and political positions, because the more traditional economists are more concerned about inflation, whereas the guys who are promoting the MMT side of things are not as concerned. So yeah. Do you want to just talk about the market, the slide that you were going to put up?
Yeah, and I was just going to share one slide here with you today, just a different thing. So this is the volatility index, which gives you an idea of how things are going in the market, quite how expansive the moves are, what the level of fear is out there in the general marketplace as well. So it's often referred to as the fear index. So when you have these big movements, obviously there's a lot of volatility in the market, and people are more worried about things that are going on. So this is a 5-year chart. So if you go back to sort of 2017, 2018, it was there was a fairly flat line, but then at the beginning of 20, as you can see, the volatility has risen up to close to 70% as the pandemic has started, and we've seen these massive moves in the market, and we're quietening back down now. And so this week we actually hit 15%, which was a 52-week low. So it just gives you an idea of how comfortable people are becoming with everything that's going on. And again, I think underscores that inflation story at this time.
Yeah, I just I seen at the side of your slide the Bitcoin sort of price today, but just on crypto, like we have touched on this a number of times now, and I mean I started out not knowing really anything about crypto or Bitcoin the last few months, but the interest in cryptocurrencies right now is off the scale. The Financial Times is writing about it every day. The Money Week guys in London, all of the financial journalists, all they're talking about right now, nearly every day at the minute, is Bitcoin, crypto, Ethereum. all this new technology software. I've obviously done two podcasts, one with you, one with your friend Rodrigo in South America. And this week, in the last 3 days, El Salvador has made it legal tender. What are you laughing at?
No, nothing. I think El Salvador is a great place.
Yeah, El Salvador. Where is El Salvador? Is that in Asia?
No, it's in South America somewhere.
Yeah, I was only joking. I understand where El Salvador is. But the point I'm making to you is, whether El Salvador is a huge economy or whether it's a big player in the world of finance, for me is nearly half irrelevant, because it is part of the adoption of Bitcoin, which a lot of these advocates are saying is going to happen very, very quickly. Just a quick comment on a country, even though El Salvador is quite small and it's not a really important place in the finance world. What's your view on them adopting this as legal tender, or is it a big deal at all?
I personally don't see it as a huge deal. It's it's probably a stepping stone forward, but you really need some of the big players some of the big countries to want to get involved. And for me, it's going to come down to that question about whether it's going to be Bitcoin or whether it's going to be a centrally controlled digital currency. And as you've mentioned in the past, with my OAP status, I veer towards that centrally controlled digital currency. But it's things like GameStop as well. Like GameStop came out with some results this week. And obviously we've seen it being bid up in this frenzy, these, the Robin Hood retail army that have been getting involved in that. And then all of a sudden GameStop yesterday, because their share price is inflated, they're going to issue another 5 million shares, and market sold off 12%. So there's lots of different ways you can control and can contain things. One of the things that's of interest to me, just while we've got some time left, Conor, is how's the funding world going at the moment? Economy's opening up. Where is and what type of money is available?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So my view of and summary of what has happened, the pandemic, if we look at started in March, pretty much last year, and if we say there was a full year to March, April, May, you're into 15 months now in this new pandemic world. So pretty much the funding world sort of stopped. They downed tools from traditional banks to the peer-to-peer lenders, bridging companies. The only sort of deals that were happening in that space in terms of actual lends were those lends that were backed by government C-bills loans. So there's no real risk to the lenders. I suppose the good news is, obviously, we own ClearPath Finance, so we have brought over 200 million into the economy in the last 5 years. And in the last 6 to 7 weeks, we have started to see a huge increase in inquiries coming through. And then last week, we were able to agree about £6 million of new facilities for 3 different companies. And I think my view would be that over the next 6 months, I think we're going to be really busy. The government stimulus programs are all coming to an end pretty much everywhere by the end of the summer. And my view would be that the ice is going to start to melt. So anyone with debt issues will sort of come out of the woodwork. And any entrepreneurs or business people who are driving businesses forward, who are trying to be creative, are looking now then and are sort of getting back on the horse, if that's maybe a way to describe it. And they're starting to ask for money, new capital. And it's a really active space again. And I think the alternative market will continue to drive the funding space over the next 12 months. Traditional banks continue to contract. They're becoming very lean. Bank of Ireland, AIB, Ulster Bank. It's going to be difficult for those guys. It's hard for them to make money. Their non-performing loan positions continue to increase. I don't see them playing a big part in the lending space in the next 12 months. But no, I'm delighted to have some positive news on that front, Nick. It is a good news story that people are actually starting to engage again and ask for money.
That's great. And as you said, I think stimulus is finishing up everywhere. I think one of the big things that's worrying the financial markets at the moment, more than anything, there's inflation, but also that because stimulus is stopping, how are the Fed going to taper some of their bond programs, and how successful are they going to be in doing it? So, all of that alternative funding is key.
Good stuff. Well done. Enjoyed this week's conversation. I will catch up with you again next week. Have a great weekend.
Take care.